Hello, good morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm in Switzerland. It's quite early in the morning, so it's quite dark. Not the best time to do a video with the lights on, but I wanted to get to the questions from the Facebook group. And if you're here for the first time on YouTube, then I'll put the link to the Facebook group down below where you can post these questions. Usually every week I try to do this and answer your most common concerns and questions. Obviously there's very specific ones and sometimes very difficult ones. I can't do them all. I'll answer the ones I can't get to if I can in the actual questions and the group. Feel free also to subscribe to get updates for more Q&As and other things that I put on my YouTube channel, and join the Facebook group for more questions. So let's quickly scroll through and I'll dive into some of the questions here. Let's start at the top. Let's start at the bottom because they were the first questions. Rosemary is asking about my bucket list. I have a lot of downloadables on my website too. If you haven't been on my website, switzerlanding.com, so just Switzerland with an ing on the end. And I have a lot of downloadable free resources on the top of the page. There's a button for that, and I have a bucket list. I may not have Montreux on my bucket list. It's not a place that I consider in the top for most visitors. Most people go from Zurich to Lucerne to the Interlaken region and then Zermatt, and maybe do the Glacier Express. That's kind of the top must-sees. Of course, Lake Geneva is stunning, and some people throw that on as an extra. It just puts you a bit out of the way in terms of seeing the other things and takes you some extra time. But if you're heading down to Geneva or landing in Geneva, then it may be worth seeing the area. You've got Montreux, Vevey, Rocher de Ney, which is a viewpoint up there. You've got the Freddie Mercury Museum, the Charlie Chaplin Museum, the beautiful lake, and the boats there. You can spend some time on the boats. The Chateau Chillon, one of Switzerland's most iconic castles. So there's lots to see and do down there. Most people do it within a day or two maximum. You can also head down to Lausanne or Geneva, bigger cities. You've got the Olympic Museum in Lausanne and the Red Cross and UN in Geneva, as well as the Philip Patek Watch Museum. So lots to see and do. It's a better area for town and museum lovers in my experience. But of course you've got the beautiful lake with the mountains, especially down the end of Montreux, with the Lavaux vineyards as well behind you. If you like wine, it's a great region for wine tasting too. So it might not be on my to-do list or my top list, but yeah, it's a beautiful region. Most regions of Switzerland are, and if that's something that interests you, then throw it on your list. Let's scroll up here. Train passes question, I'll get to that a bit later. Jennifer's asking about Shor Reservations. Yes, the Shor website is the best place to do that. If you want to book ahead, you can book just on the day as well at the gondola at the ticket office. I wouldn't book too far ahead because you don't know what the weather's going to be like, and you should always check the webcam if possible on the morning of your mountain trip, because it could be fogged in on the top and nice down the bottom, or vice versa can also happen. So yeah, paying ahead is never usually a great idea, but if you want to do the brunch up there, then you might need to reserve. The Shiltorn is currently opening their new gondolas, so I believe only up to Berg is open. That's probably why you're seeing issues booking. That opens up in March, the new gondola, so things might change then. Otherwise, write them an email and see what's happening there. I'm going to again skip past train passes for the moment. Sarah's asking about waterfall hikes in Lauterbrunnen and then going up to the Jungfrau. You can certainly do the Jungfrau in half a day, even from Grindelwald, and then come over into Lauterbrunnen for the later half of the day, or vice versa. So if you've only got one day, you can get the full loop in, and that's worth doing because it's about the same amount of time. From Interlaken you come up, and then the valley splits, and then both of the valleys end up at the Jungfraujoch via Kleiner Scheidegg is the meeting point of the train from both sides. So that's worth doing, and you can easily get to the Staubach waterfalls from the Lauterbrunnen train station. And even the Trommelbach Falls, which are further back, is only about a 10-minute bus ride, and then about a 10-minute walk from there. So you could easily fit all of that in one day, no problem. Bala wants accommodation in Uster. That's not something I can really help you with for 2 months. If you're looking for accommodation, I usually just look on Airbnb or Booking.com. That's my go-tos for that. Opening and closing times in Switzerland is another common question, as is in most of Europe, because it's a religious background. Sundays, things tend to be closed. Things don't usually close over lunchtime so much in Switzerland as they do in southern countries in Europe, and maybe even France. The post office may close. In smaller towns, some shops may close because the kids come home at lunchtime. And so if the shops are run by a lot of parents who need to get home for their kids, then the smaller shops may close over lunchtime for a couple of hours. But typically in the cities, that does not happen. But Sundays, things are closed. Restaurants and cafes not. They make good money on Sundays, so they stay open. If you're desperate for food in the supermarket, you can always go to the train station, especially in a big city. The train stations have exemptions as to the airports, so you can always get food and even clothes and stuff on Sundays in the train stations because of that exemption. Museums, it depends. Some of them might be open, some of them might be closed. You have to look at the specific museum and attraction you're looking for. Mountains and gondolas will be open every day of the week, so that's kind of irrelevant. But if you're looking to go shopping specifically in the cities, then Sunday is a bad day to do that. And while we're on the topic of open and closed, if you're looking at hikes and what's open and what's possible, because of course you're planning these amazing trips and you've got all these amazing hikes, the Stoss Ridge hike, the Menlichen hike, the Backalpsee hike from Feest, for example, in Interlaken, a lot of the most popular hikes. The problem you're going to get is that a lot of these hikes are between 1,500 and 2,000 metres, and you can multiply that by 3 for feet if you're interested. You're going to have snow until late June potentially, and last year it even snowed into July because global warming is changing the planet, and the snow and sun days are changing in each month here. Sometimes we get hot in April and May, and sometimes we get cold in June and July. You just cannot predict it. And because these are hikes, they're not attraction, they're not fun parks, it's nature. You cannot predict when these hikes are going to be open. So if you want to do the most popular hikes, you really need to come late June, July at the earliest. And as a hiker myself, we often don't go hiking until July, August, September. And September's better because the snow doesn't start until October, November. So you get at the end of summer, the snow has melted, and so all the hikes are open. So if you're a hiker and that's really a must-do on your list, then the later you come, the better. But if you can't hike in those months, then you're going to have to go lower down. So you might want to do a Lauterbrunnen Valley hike. Maybe the hikes around Mürren might be open, potentially, like to Mürren to Gimmelwald, which is a road, so that should be open. The North Face hike in Mürren may be open. That's from Almundhübel down to Mürren. That may still be open, although it's reasonably high up there. So if you're in March and April, there's probably snow. Really, people are still skiing a lot into April, so you can't expect the snow to be gone in April by any means. Yeah, so you may want to do stuff lower down in the valleys in Lauterbrunnen. In Grindelwald, there's not so many valley hikes. Maybe you could hike along the lakes in Lake Thun or Lake Brienz. There's some nice hikes between Iseltwald and the Giesbach Falls, for example, is a lovely hike. Or there's a full circular hike around Lake Thun, although you're going to have to watch if parts of it go up higher. There's lots of valley hikes, and just to give you a quick idea of maybe where you can go for hikes. We typically use Switzerland Mobility, and if you click on the map down the bottom right here, you can zoom in and you can type in, for example, Grindelwald. And then I need to look for the town here, click on there, and then it zooms in. These are not all the hikes, these are just some of the hikes. You can see you can do mountain biking, canoeing, skating, and you can see all of these lines are hikes. Yellow and red, they're different categories. The yellow ones are a little bit easier, the red ones are a little bit more mountainous, which is not to say they're crazy, it depends on the hike. These ones are closed due to various reasons, storm damage, it says here. So you need to keep an eye out on that. These are more long distance, sort of famous hikes. The green ones, they tend to have photos and paths in here. So you can get more information on here, or you can go onto something like All Trails as well. Let's see what else we've got here. Yeah, so just getting back to weather, the later you can come into summer, the better, but it gets busy in July and August. So typically I tell people June, September, if you don't need to travel in the summer months. Summer is best because everything's open, the snow's melted, all the gondolas are running. Up until May, some of them may be closed. I've got a mountain closures list which you can get hold of, which shows you which ones are open when, because if you come in October or April, May, there can be gondolas that are closed because they need to do maintenance at some point, and they're the low points in the season, so they tend to close in October, November and April and May. So you have to watch out for what's open and possible during those months. Yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next one. Grindelwald Glacia Canyon. Laura's asking if you should do it with the lights on. I've never done it with the lights on. I've done it in the middle of summer when it was boiling hot, so it was a really awesome place to get out of the heat. It's really cool in there because it's shielded from the sun and because you've got the glacial water, which is really cold, making it really cool. Yeah, if you don't have time to do it during the day and you're doing the mountains during the day, then do it at night. It would be really cool, actually. And you've got the spider web in the middle, which is also lit up. And I think the canyon would be really cool to see at night. It's 10 minutes from downtown Grindelwald. You can take the bus from the train station. It's walkable, but most people wouldn't walk it. I've walked it in one direction. It took me about half an hour. Yeah, so that's the Glacia Canyon in Grindelwald. And for any of you interested, I have guides on a lot of these areas, and that's listed in my Interlaken guide, which gives you all the to-dos. And I've also got specific itinerary guides on Grindelwald and Lauterbrunnen and Lucerne as well, which map out exactly what you should do each day of your trip in these regions if you're struggling to sort of piece all that together, whether you do First and then the canyon, or whether you do Lauterbrunnen and then Jungfrau. I've kind of pieced all that together so you can have a far easier trip and get the best out of your 2, 3, 4 days in the region. Let me continue here. Sarah is asking Gornergrat and Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. You can do them on one day. Yeah, if you're doing them in winter, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I mean, you're not going to be doing as much walking around in winter. You can certainly get them in one day. I mean, the Gornergrat leaves from opposite the Zermatt train station, so for most people it's usually super accessible. Depends where your accommodation is. And then there's local electric buses to the other end of the valley where the Matterhorn gondolas go from. You'd have to start early, I would say, in winter because you've got less daylight hours. Obviously, the sun sets 5-ish, and with a valley, it's sort of a bit earlier. But yeah, I mean, the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise is maybe more interesting in winter because you've got the Ice Palace tunnel, which you don't have at the Gornergrat. The Gornergrat's more glacier views, which, considering everything's white in winter, may not be so noticeable. It's more impressive in summer, obviously, with the contrast between the glacier and the grass. But Yeah, you can also squeeze it in between skiing if you've got a ski pass, but you're not talking about skiing. And you don't really need to book these gondolas either. I would always plan for the day depending on the weather and don't spend the money. And there's a ticket for both of these in combination called the Zermatt Peak to Peak Pass, which I'll just show you here. So you can get a discount if you're doing both on one day, and if you have a half fare or Swiss Travel Pass, you can get an even bigger discount. So if you want to do both on one day, it's worth considering this pass. Otherwise, you should use one of the other passes. Yeah, we've already covered walking trails here for Sophia. She's also asking about walking trails open in February. Very, very difficult. Could also be snow in the valleys. So I would say maybe the Lauterbrunnen Valley Walk. And actually there's some winter walks. In the height of winter, you can do a lot of the classic walks as winter walks because they keep it kind of not smooth, but snow-free in a sense that you can walk. It's compressed, but you need pretty good shoes, I would say. You can't, or I wouldn't walk around in Adidas or Nike or white sort of trainers. I would make sure you have hiking boots because it can be quite difficult and you can get quite wet. So yeah, the winter walks are really cool, but you want to have good gear and lots of different layers because it's going to get cold up there. You want to have at least, sort of down layers, and yeah, layers are always good for Switzerland because when it gets hot, you can take various layers off. When it gets cold, you can add them on. Debbie's asking about going to Pilatus and the Matterhorn. We intend to do Pilatus and the Matterhorn. Would Stoßbahn be worth doing as well? I mean, Stoß is a complete other thing. I mean, everyone raves about it because it's a really cool funicular, but it takes you to a town in the middle of a bowl where you can't really see much. I mean, you can see opposite you on the other side of the valley, you can see the Mitten, which is a nice little mountain, but it's not that impressive in comparison to Pilatus or the Matterhorn. What's the impressive part is when you get up to the top of the bowl, there's a ridge and a really long hike, 2 to 3 hours, depending on how fast you are, called the Stoß Ridge Hike. It's no walk in the park. It's not a crazy hike, but if you're not fit, you're going to be challenged because there's a bit of altitude to go up and down, and it's relatively long. So I saw some people on there who were really suffering. I'm quite fit, so for me it's not a big deal, but I live here and hike a lot for 20 years. So yeah, it's a bit of a different thing. So Stoß, it's also really far away. I had a consult, something else I do for people if they're interested. I had a one-on-one consult with a client yesterday discussing their itinerary and trying to figure things out. And he was looking at this particular hike. But it's going to take you the whole day if you're in Lucerne. You'd have to get there from Lucerne. You can also do it from Zurich potentially. But it takes hour and a half, 2 hours to get to the start of the hike, and that's probably not even including the gondolas. So, and then when you include the hike plus eating and photos and all the rest of it, you're looking at the whole day to do that. And is that worth it for most people? If you're a hiker, probably. If you're not a hiker, then yeah, I would maybe just do Pilatus or Rigi or even Bergenstock. Again, big list of those in my Lucerne guide, which you guys can find on my website, all the different mountain options around Lake Lucerne and which offers what and why you would do them. The only positive with Stoß, at least up until the town of Stoß, I don't think the gondolas to the top are included, but the Stoßbahn itself is included in the Swiss Travel Pass for free. That's one of the few that's for free. Rigi is one of the other ones. So we've also talked about shopping. Yeah, I think maybe in touristy villages, shops and supermarkets maybe open a little bit more on Sunday. It's been a while since I was in Zermatt or somewhere on a Sunday and looked. I mean, I think maybe the shops for gear and that kind of thing tend to open more on Sundays in places like Zermatt, not in Lucerne because that's a normal city. but somewhere like Zermatt and Grindelwald may have a few more things open on a Sunday. Travelling on trains and luggage size is always an interesting question. My advice to you, pack as light as possible and wear your things more times than once, unless you're an Instagrammer and need different outfits for every picture, in which case you're going to suffer. Because if you need to get on a train with a massive suitcase and it's not a ground level train, which is the double deckers, which is maybe 50% of the time, if it's a single level train, you're going to have to get up half a metre, 3/4 of a metre to get on the train, and you're going to have to lift your suitcase up quite a height. Not fun. And when you get on the train, if it's busy and you're with your massive suitcase, you're going to really struggle. You can potentially slide suitcases between the seats behind you and maybe under your seat. But if it's a huge suitcase, then you're going to have to just stand it with you and you're not going to have a fun trip. So my advice is pack light, medium-sized suitcase and a backpack. The backpack can go potentially above you, but don't ever throw your valuables, your passport, your wallet, your phone away from you. Always keep that with you if possible. There's not a lot of theft on Swiss trains, but it can happen. So yeah, that's a general train thing. Let's see if I've missed anything before we quickly talk about train passes. The Gelmerbahn versus the Oceanen Lake. The Gelmerbahn's a nice lake. It's a lot further away. I think if we looked at travel times, let's just take Interlaken. And this is the SBB website if you haven't used it before. This gives you all your travel times. So let's go to the Gelmerbahn. Maybe it's not running now. Let's see, in July. So it's an hour and a half, an hour 20. And then Kandersteg is where the Oceanen Lake is. That's an hour 10. So they're about the the reason people go to the Gelmerbahn is because of the video of this amazing roller coaster ride, which is actually a lie because this thing is steep, but it travels so slow. Those videos are sped up. It was used to build the dam, and that's why it was used to transport goods originally. And it's super, super steep and crazy, and it has a beautiful lake on the top. But yeah, it's not exactly the ride that you see on the videos. So as long as you're okay with it going really, 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 really slow, then you're not going to be disappointed. The Oceanen Lake is pretty impressive. It's kind of hard to beat. I mean, look at that. That's crazy. Yeah, and it's hard to get a view up this high. You have to hike quite a height, but you can go up at least a little bit of the way to the viewpoints, at least if you're reasonably fit. And the walls around the lake are just really crazy. You can see here it's a super impressive place to go. So yeah, I don't think you're going to be disappointed by doing either, but just be aware the Gelmerbahn is not perhaps what you've been led to believe it to be, if that's the reason you're going there. So I think I've pretty much covered everything except train passes. So I actually have a sort of a mini guide and a large paid guide on how to pick train passes if you're really struggling with it. But in general, and you can find that link on my resources page on my website, and I'll try and add it somewhere here on the post as well. But yeah, you've got multiple regional passes, you've got the half-fare card, the Swiss travel pass, and it really comes down to whether or not you want to spend more money or whether you want to save money. The half-fare card is the one you use to save money, but you have to buy every ticket for everything all the time and never get it wrong because you'll get fined, and it's $100 if you get a fine. So Yeah, it's great if you're saving money, but for most people, the difference between the half fare and the Swiss Travel Pass is 100, 150 bucks per person. So you have to decide, do I want to save the money or do I want to enjoy my trip? And then you have regional passes, gets really super complex. And I actually have a service where I help people with this. And you can sometimes have regional passes that make sense if you're doing a lot of gondolas in a compressed period of time. But for most people, that doesn't come into play and it's just not worth considering. And then there's super saver passes as well, where you can travel really long distances within one day and it's about 50 to 70 bucks. And to do that, you really have to travel a long way. It's like Glacier Express kind of distances, not just Zurich to Interlaken, and that doesn't make sense for a day saver pass. But you can certainly use those for really long days of travel, or you can try and use the website, the SBB website, and the app where you have daily discounts, but you have to travel on specific trains and catch all the connections and not screw that up at all, which is also quite complex. So yeah, that's all I'd have to say about train passes. It's a super complex topic. I can't give you an easy answer, which is why most of you are asking me that, is because it is really difficult. I help quite a few clients with it. So if you're really struggling, then get in touch with me on my website or on Facebook and I'll do what I can. So I hope I've answered everyone's questions. If not, then just let me know and I'll do my best to help you out where I can. Thanks for watching and watch out for next week's Q&A on the YouTube channel or on my Facebook group. Thanks for watching.